Hey everyone, what's up? Hope you're all having a good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on where you're based out of. My name's Brandon. I am reporting to you from a disappointingly cloudy San Diego today. Can't complain too much. The weather's still pretty good, but a little bit darker than I'd like to see. And Nick, where are you based out of again?
I'm out of Austin, Texas, and the
Right,
weather
right.
right now
Awesome.
is both cloudy and scorching. So it's
Ah,
fun
tough
outside.
combo. Tough combo. Don't get the sunlight, but still get all the heat. But yeah, feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling in from. Maybe how many different. Oh, thank you. Someone likes the wall decor. I
Nice.
actually stole this from one of our conferences, so keep it a secret. But it adds to my environment a little bit. Yeah, feel free to mention where you're calling in from. Maybe how you heard about Mastra. If this is your first workshop by any chance. Oh, all the way in India, late night, sunny
Wow.
Toronto.
India,
Ooh, Logan,
India.
Utah. That's awesome. I actually just
Wow.
moved to San Diego, and I drove from New York. So I drove through Utah and was absolutely beautiful. I almost wanted to stop short and just move there instead. Are you just working out at home, Nick?
Yeah, currently it's in my home office,
Nice.
escaping the heat.
Good setup.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow, we got all over the world today. Oh, we got Abby here from Mastra
Nice.
HQ. Incredible. Got Brazil. Oh, Dan's in Austin too.
Oh, nice. So you got
Amazing.
Belgium,
Yeah, moved here
London.
during the pandemic. Yeah, I feel like that was a really large pattern is once the pandemic hit, a lot of people just found the most naturey places they could find, and I don't blame them. Took the southern route from Rochester to San Diego. Yeah, I feel like that's you jump through a lot of cities there. That's a cool one too. I'd love to take that at some point. We'll get started in just another minute or two here. Just gonna wait to see if there's any last people that join in. Will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. You'll be able to access it at any time on our YouTube channel. All of our different workshops and live stream and agents hour, all that different stuff is always recorded. Yeah, 100%. You can always share this with your org. The benefit of watching it live is you get to ask us questions along the way. But in general, yeah, all this different content we keep recorded. You can always share it with your team async. Um, we have a ton of people that are able to tune in from all over the world, which is awesome. But we're super cognizant of it's very different time zones for different people. So we definitely want to make it super accessible. Someone said Nick seems to be a Spider-Man fan, and he's a Monster fan. Did you see the new Spider-Man?
Not yet. I saw the. I'm not much of a Spider-Man fan if I haven't seen it, but I gotta make some
Gotcha.
time.
It's all right. You got time. It came out recently. I haven't. I haven't seen it. I actually don't come at me for this, but I'm not too much of like a Spider-Man guy. I haven't seen much. I admire it from afar, but haven't really seen any of them. But my good friend saw it the other day and said it was incredible, so can highly recommend. All right, I think we'll just give it a few more seconds here. I see we still have a few more people coming in. All right. I think we can get this show on the road now. So today we have a workshop that I am super, super excited for. It's not just because it's the first one I'm hosting, it's also because we're going to be talking about a feature that I've been super excited about, been hearing a lot of interest from for our users, and that is dynamic workflows. So, we're going to dive into dynamic workflows in a little bit. First, to start off, I'd love to just do a quick intro on both of our ends. I know that this is the first time a lot of you are probably seeing me. I'm sorry to say that you're going to have to see me a lot more in the coming weeks and months. So, going to have to get used to this face. So, I thought I'd just do a quick intro to let you guys know who I am. So, I'm Brandon. I'm a special projects engineer here at Mastra. I've been at Mastra for, I think, a bit over 4 months now, and I have a background in software engineering as well as venture capital, so startup investment. So, as a special projects engineer, I basically work on different projects that require some sort of technical know how and also some sort of strategic or customer facing know how. What that's taken the shape of is right now doing stuff like this, some dev relations stuff where I help dive into technical concepts we're doing. Also, a lot of different internal data projects, a lot of customer facing stuff, taking user calls, helping them debug problems, different things like that. But with that in mind, I'll pass it over to Nick, the real star of the show today, to do a quick intro on his end.
Yeah, I'm yeah. So, hey guys, I'm Nick. I've been a software engineer at Mastra for about, I want to say about almost 2 years now, about one and a half. So I've been kind of since I started. I've been kind of working on all kinds of things like storage adapters, dynamic workflows, of course. Working on browsers in the browser space. That's kind of the it's kind of how it is at Mastra. Everyone works on everything a little bit. We get a little, we all get kind of knowledge on the whole space, which is nice. So I'm kind of been working on quite a few different varied things. I think you've probably seen me on workshops before, and excited for this one.
Awesome. And with that in mind, there's no one I'd rather be doing my first workshop with. As Nick said, he's sort of, been in the weeds of Monster for quite a bit, built out a ton of cool stuff. So super excited to be able to do this with him and to chat about dynamic workflows. So with that in mind, let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about dynamic workflows. Now, what is a dynamic workflow? And very simply, a dynamic workflow is just taking a workflow and instead of having it be defined in code, define it as a data object. In this case, master workflows defined as JSON objects. And so, what does that look like a little bit under the hood? Like, what is the master definition of a dynamic workflow? It looks something like this, where you have these four required definition fields. You have an ID, input schema, and output schema, which if you built workflows with Master before, I'm sure you recognize as the basic building blocks to define the beginnings of your workflow. Give it an ID, tell it what input it receives, and tell it what output it gives out. And the last required field we have is graph. And this is where a lot of the work under the hood is going on. This defines what steps your workflow is taking, how it actually runs, any agents or tools that it calls, all this different stuff. So to jump into the graph entry for a little bit, these are all the different things you have within graph. So any agents that you're calling, any tools, that's where you define these. If there's other workflows, if you want to start nesting workflows or anything like that, this is all defined within graph as well. And you also define a lot of the different relationships or running patterns you have of workflows. So if you want things running in parallel or conditionally, you want to set up some loops or some for each loops or anything like that, this is all defined here as well. So as you can see, the graph is really where a lot of this different information on how the workflow actually runs is being held. Now, to take a step back here, where did this idea actually come from and why are we implementing it? And at its very basic root, this comes from a lot of trends that we're seeing both just in the industry and in users that we work with, the demands that they really have. And that is for the ability to define workflows in a lot of different ways. There's a huge rise of people defining workflows through agents, through different UI environments, and being able to, at runtime, create different workflows and inject them into different processes. And at its core, to be able to do this on the fly creation of workflows requires the ability to define them as data objects rather than having them defined as code that we have to redeploy every time. So once we had that as sort of a North Star goal, the actual transition to making workflows into data structures is relatively straightforward in the sense of the way that we define master workflows is pretty simple. We have stuff like mentioned before with the ID input schema, output schema that tracks very well to data structures. And in terms of actually defining all the stuff within graph, the big unlock was getting these different conditionals and loops be able to defined as declarative operators. That was sort of the last unlock we needed to be able to transfer workflows from code into data structures. And so, just as an overview of sort of how we've kind of gotten here over the course of agentic development, of course, we started with agents. One of the big problems with agents over time is they're really fun. They can solve a ton of complex problems, but since they're naturally non deterministic, you lack some of the predictability and sort of auditability of the different processes it goes down. That's why we've invested so much into building out great workflows that give you this determinism, but workflows have become so powerful that people want to be able to define them in a lot of different ways. And with traditional workflows, they're not authored at runtime. You have to deploy them every time you're making changes. So that's why where dynamic workflows comes in. It gives you this deterministic layer you can add to your agentic system, but it can also be authored at runtime, which gives it way more accessibility. And to sort of just dive in a little bit to what I just said there, as mentioned, when you're running create workflow, that means you're editing the code, you're committing it, you're building, deploying, restarting it, and then running. And every time you want to iterate or add new workflows, you're going over that whole process again. Meanwhile, with dynamic workflows, all you got to do is author JSON, do a post request, it gets validated, and then it's live on the platform. So this means as you update workflows, you can just inject it into a running server. You don't need to go through this whole deploy process that you have to do with traditional workflows. And so, what this brings about, and sort of what we went to as the North Star, is that it makes for really easy access of workflows. So, rather than needing to manipulate the source code to edit your workflows, you have all these different entry points you can use. You can use an HTTP client to develop workflows. You can actually have agents that are building workflows using their LLM to actually inject it into whatever project you're doing. You can create different visual editors and all this different stuff. And internally at Mastra, this is something that, for example, unlocks Agent Builder, our no code agent building platform. This kind of opens the door for us to now be able to even build workflows using that. So, overall, it just gives you a ton more access, the ability to have way more entry points into building workflows with your product. And so, just to wrap up here before we kind of get into a live demo to see these dynamic workflows in action, a little bit on when you kind of want to use or lean towards dynamic workflows rather than traditional ones. The first use case is if you want a lot of entry points, if you want stuff like end users being able to define workflows, to create different workflow building UIs and things like that. If you want people that aren't just within the code to be able to define your workflows, that's when you'll start to lean towards dynamic workflows. Also, if you just want fast iteration, if you know you're going to be editing workflows over and over and you don't want to have to go through that redeploy every single time, that's a great time to lean towards dynamic workflows. Really, you should only feel the need to stay on traditional workflows if you have custom step logic within your workflow that has to run code, which can't be represented into this JSON object. What's cool about this, though, is a lot of times you can just take whatever this code is and make it into a tool. And as mentioned before, these dynamic workflows are able to access any existing tools. So if this code is able to be defined as an exterior tool, you can still use dynamic workflows. But in case it can't and you need that code within that step logic, you should still stick with traditional Mastra workflows. Now, with that in mind, now that we've talked a lot about it, it's time to get to the real fun, which is a demo of dynamic workflows live. So, with that in mind, I'll pass it over to Nick now, who can just take you under the hood and show you a little bit about a few demos actually using these dynamic workflows in action.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Let me share my screen.
And let's see if there are any
Oh yeah.
few questions here. Will we have a GitHub example? Is this are we going to be sharing these demos on GitHub as well, Nick?
Yeah, these will be available at GitHub after the workshop. I have I have it ready, so we can share the link to it afterwards. But
Amazing.
so we're ready to go. Let me make this bigger so everyone can see it. Okay, so right now we have no. I have the studio started up. Right now we have no current workflows yet, but in our workshop example, we have quite a few. I basically built. Um, I built this out using just a few scripts. All these scripts do is just call their API. So we'll load a workflow JSON. We'll show some logging for it, and then we'll use like upserting and running. And these are all just using
Sorry,
API
do
calls.
do you mind just zooming in a touch,
Oh, sorry.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean,
No, no, you're good.
that look better? Or should I look bigger?
That's perfect.
Nice. I know if that looks good. Okay, cool. So basically, we have a bunch of, and this is an example of one of the workflow JSONs that we'll be using. So we have a very basic greeting workflow. So it creates a greeting for the supplied name. So we have input schema, we have output schema, and then we have the graph. And the graph is calling a tool with the type greet. A lot of when we have tools like this, we have it also set up here. So we have like a greeting tool and a shout tool. And then the workflow will use those existing tools to when spinning up the workflow. So for this first example, I can show it now. I'll just go on and run that script right now. So right now, it is calling the greeting workflow. So it's going to print out, and this is for the script for the workshop. It prints out the entire workflow as the JSON. And then we can see that it's posting to our endpoint. So it's saving that greeting workflow, and it can run that immediately. So it's able to run. We even put the name Brandon, and we get hello Brandon as a result. And actually, we can actually see this in Studio as well. So I can refresh the page. Now we see that there's a greeting workflow. I go in there, I open that up. I can put my name, and there's run the workflow. So we get a pretty easy way of just providing a JSON object, and you can have just an easy workflow, and it also persists across Studio starts. So that's like the first one we have. We also have validation for certain workflows too. So like we have this workflow that references a tool that does not exist. So it's basically if you construct the JSON in a way where it won't create a valid workflow, it's we have good validation for it to make sure that it doesn't cause any issues. So I can just run this real quick. So right now we're showing that this is the entire JSON in its entirety. Then we can see that when we try to save it to the using the endpoint, we'll see exactly what the error is and see how to fix. This is a good way for users to know how to fix certain validation issues that come up. So this won't be persisted because of that validation issue. The next one I want to show is basically updating an existing workflow. So we already have the greeting workflow, and we already saved this as a workflow to the studio. But now we have another workflow called the V2. And the main difference for this one is that we're adding a shout tool, which basically, and I'll show you what that tool does. It just uppercases a message and adds exclamation points. So I can show you, and then this will work on the existing workflow and allow us to update it pretty easily. So we have this whole, like before, it's the same ID, but it's a new graph. So now we have two tools. We have a greet tool and a shout tool. And then we could easily upsert with the same post at endpoint. It'll update the same workflow. And now we could see like, okay, we have this input. We can see that we get a hello Brandon, and then we have it uppercase and add exclamations. And I can show you also this in our studio. So I can go here, and it's even changed the description of it. So I can do like, run this, run with my name, and now, yeah, so now it goes through, it has the greet output, and then it has the shout output, which uppercases. So it makes it really easy for, as you can see we can see from here, it makes it really easy to just like add add workflows, delete, update workflows. Um, Basically, it makes it very easy to just manipulate or update your workflows at will. Um,
Yeah, and I'd love to actually touch on one thing you showed there that I think is super important, which is the validation that you mentioned in your second part of the demo.
yeah,
That's one big thing, especially as we're seeing all these new entry points that we're providing into building out things on Mastra. It's so important to have these validation layers to make sure, people can't just inject different stuff while breaking the system as a whole. So to have all that sort of validation out of the box, super clear error messaging as well to help guide people, it's really awesome to already see that in basically the first version of this. Which, yeah, to also mention, this is obviously a super new feature. Currently still in beta, so it's only going to get better and better from here. But awesome for the table stakes to already have a great validation layer.
yeah, I agree. I mean, also definitely helps us right now. Let me do another one. Let's see here. I'll pick a one from random. Let's do a little with the mapping step. So this one basically a lot of the API workflows are kind of the similar way where we can just see. I can just show you the workflow JSON. It's all very kind of similar structure. It's kind of easy to get once you understand the initial like the greeting workflow. If you can take a look at the greeting workflow JSON, you can take a look at like some of these other ones. Like we have delayed greeting. So like they're all kind of the same structure. They all have input schema, they all have output schema, they all have graphs. And you can very easily see how you can get from a greeting workflow, which has one tool, to something called like a delayed greeting, right? This has three tools. And it's very easy to understand, like, okay, we do this greet, then we have a pause, and then we have an amplify. So I can actually show you this one right now. Um, so let me do that right now. And it's very easy to tell, like, okay, I think from all these demos, you can see that, like how exactly this works. So like, what this one will do is it basically like creates a greeting and then it pauses 2 seconds and then amplifies. And you can see how when it runs, and I'll show that in the studio. So right here, so we might put my name. It'll run, it'll pause for 2 seconds, and then it'll finish. And you can see how like, okay, a lot of the JSON is structured in a way that's very easy to understand and kind of easy to follow. And you can easily create the kind of workflow you need just from these building blocks. Let me see what else we want to do. We can also I'll do one more. So I'll do okay, I'll do this. I'll do one more of the demo, the APIs, and then we'll switch to Mastra code for a second. So we have this one, which basically is greeting every name in the list using for each. Again, very simple. We have it's all input schema, which is an array, output schema, which is also an array, and then we have a graph, which contains like a for each type, and we have a tool that lets us go through each input and add a greeting. So then we can easily do, yeah, and then okay, like add in 2 items here. It can be like Nick, Brandon, like before, like very simple to understand, very easy to create what you want from it, and it creates like hello Nick, hello Brandon from the 2 input items. So that's basically how you would do it with the API. Pretty easy to understand, but there's also a lot of, with how the API works, there's also a lot of JSON you have to mess with. And you might not necessarily want to have to deal with that. Maybe you just want to have the AI handle all of that. So in which case we have in Mastra code, we have the ability to also dynamically create workflows. So I'll also show that off right now. So let me get this one real quick. So here's a very basic one. I have a build me a workflow that takes a file path, reads the file, and reports its word count. So I'm gonna run that in Mastra code. and it's gonna. We have a create workflow function or create workflow tool in Mastra code that helps create these workflows. And I'll show you also what other things you can do with um, the workflow tool in Mastra code. But this basically sends it to uses the LLM to help construct the workflow for us, and it tends to do it in one shot. And whoops, tends to do it in one shot. So it'll create the entire workflow graph, the whole workflow definition, and then save that. And then once it's done, we can try running it and see how that works. Now it's done. It created the workflow. Cool. And now let me use it here. Use the workflow to, and you could run it, you could either run it like that, like slash workflows run, and then use the tool exactly, or you can just have it use the workflow to use the workflow on the readme.md. So I have this giant readme in here. Let's see how if I can read it. So we're trying to get the word count. So right now it's gonna use the workflow on the readme, and soon it'll give us the result. It takes some time. It's an LLM. Yeah, very expensive word counting. But this is just an example of what we can do. I'm like, while that's going on, let me yeah, very, very, very expensive word counting. Okay, but it succeeded. It's going to give me a word count. Okay, it's 509 words. So I mean, not probably it's an okay example for this, but it just shows that you can make a workflow for anything, and you have the agent do it. So you have, and you can also see what workflows it created as well. So you can do /workflows. I can see that there's a file word count workflow that got created. I can also delete it if I don't want it. And I'm thinking, oh, this isn't actually a very good workflow. Then I can just do this and then delete it. So now I can delete it on the fly. It's not going to show up anymore. So now we can try adding another one if we want. So yeah, let me try making one more, and then we can move on. But yeah, this is like pretty much the power of how we can do it in Mastra code. Yeah. So I guess while we wait for this, what do you want to do, Brandon? Should we take questions while we?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, we can cover a few questions. So there's a few questions kind of on just like workflow functionality here. First one being how we can potentially handle suspend resume functionality or human in the loop using dynamic workflows.
Oh, okay. Suspend, resume. We can everything that handles with pretty much everything that we can do with a regular workflow can be constructed dynamically as well. I guess I can try testing something out real quick. But basically everything that suspend, resume, human in the loop, they all can be done along just as well. You can have the LLM construct that for you, and then it should work about the same.
Got it. Awesome. And then I guess we can go through one more quick question on that. So do dynamic workflows support request context propagation in the same way as regular workflows? So reference tools that use values from request context, which are injected at the middleware layer.
They should. We currently do it runs through the same flow as regular workflows. So basically, the only real difference is when we construct it. When we construct it and save it, it gets saved in a certain format. But once we hydrate it, it gets added. It gets kind of used the same way as other regular workflows. So you can pass in request context and utilize request context in these saved workflows.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we have a few more coming in, but if the next step is ready, happy to sort of tackle those after.
I'll just run this real quick. So this one can run. I'll just use the same uh, the what they gave me for running it. Oh, Mastra. Yeah. Okay, they gave me the tagline. Gotta make this bigger too. See, let me see what the questions. Let me see here. We can yeah, I can run through more prompts, or do you want to? Is there any other interesting questions?
Yeah, we could tackle a few of these questions. So, first few I can tackle here. So, can these workflows be saved to a local database versus local JSON files? Yeah. So, any way that you can connect access from these data files to your project is fine. They don't just have to be locally. Can we expect a recording of this after this session? Yeah. So, everything we do, all this kind of content, all of our workshops, all of our company workshops, our agents hour podcast, all that stuff. We do a live version so people can ask questions live and things like that. But it's all recorded. I believe we send out a recording to everyone that registered afterwards, but it also lives on our YouTube channel as well. So you can check out there. Um, yeah, and then this question. This is a cool open-ended one that would be awesome, I think, for us to spend a bit of time on. But if designing agents for clients, how would you best recommend I balance building agents for a well-defined system versus them making stuff themselves when they want to expand the agents they get given? I mean, the short answer of this question is it really, really depends, right? But I think it depends a lot on your use case. Like there are certain use cases where if you're building agents for people, a very generalized agent will do and cover basically everyone's use cases. Um, but there are other examples, like I'll give an example of like a customer that I was working with that is building agents for people basically doing like content creation, and every single person has very specific sort of content patterns that they do in terms of what kind of media they create, what different platforms they're putting it on, all that stuff, which actually required a lot of sort of customization around basically every creator needed their own specific workflow to run through. So for a use case like that, it's good to give a lot of flexibility. I would just say, sort of regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, what is important to have ownership over is a lot of the different tools that you're building and things like that. I think if you're giving a lot of freedom in terms of like the workflows and the order people can call things and which tools they can call and stuff, that's great. But it's good to have a really robust set of tools and agents that you've built out to kind of give that customability. But know that you've built all that out, so you trust all that being called. But yeah, that would be sort of my high level take. Nick, I don't know if you have anything to add on that one.
No, I think that's about what I would say too. The biggest emphasis is it really depends on your use case. Um, yeah, and I would say that's probably the biggest. That's probably the biggest variable in how you would approach that. So it really depends.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it's a very case by case basis, but yeah. But other than that, we have how does an agent use a workflow? I think it would be good to just take a look at high level. I'll send in the chat our like workflows overview docs page. And I think it would be great to take a look at that to get a good idea. But the basic idea is agents can call workflows. So agents can have this like deterministic process that they're running through. Workflows can also have agents within them, which that's sort of within our graph field of dynamic workflows. We saw that you can put different agents into workflows as well. So there's a bunch of different combinations of how agents and workflows can work together. And there's also, a lot of debate over where the line goes from workflow to agent. So that's just to say workflows and agents together are like a very robust partnership that can be defined in like a lot of different ways. But in terms of getting started with it, I would just take a look at like the workflows overview. And next question from Sebastian. So, will Mastra Studio include a visual editor for updating dynamic workflows manually or even create a dynamic duplicate of a hard coded workflow. Nick, I don't know if you have any like further perspective on this than me. I would say like high level, all of these different things that dynamic workflows unlock, including stuff like this, is for sure stuff that's on the roadmap. It's just a question of sort of like when we sort of are able to build it out because we're building out so many different things. So, Nick, I don't know if you have any more, I guess, high level, maybe if you could chat a little bit about like what's immediately up next for dynamic workflows. I don't know if it's any of this stuff specifically, but maybe what people might be able to expect in like the coming months around this.
So I do have something that I was going to show. I guess there is a lot of interest in seeing it in studio. So this is like a little sneak peek.
Ooh,
If there's any bugs, don't blame me. It's still in progress. But I'll shut it off. So I showed you before that you can do workflows in API, like through the API, and you can do workflows in Mastra code. But if you don't want to do either of those, what if you just want the studio, kind of like Agent Builder, you just want the studio to be able to build workflows for you. So we have a create workflow, we have a workflow builder. So now we just need to describe, you can just describe a workflow and it will create one for you. So I could be like create, or if Brandon, if you want to give me an idea, we could just try
yeah.
anything out.
We can just do create a workflow that like generates compliments.
Okay. Thanks for a specific name. Okay, let's see what happens with this. So now how this one works is it's basically just like how we use it in Mastra code, except we can see it visually in Studio, and it's already done before I even finished talking about it. But it'll explain everything it's doing and give you a summary of everything it's completed, give you all the graphs it's done, and then so then when it's like this, you can like save the draft it made, so you can use it. So you could save it, and I could run it right now. So let's generate some compliments for Brandon. So it's going through it, and we'll see if this works. Okay, cool. And now let's see what kind of a compliments it created shape output. Wow.
Oh, a list. Oh my goodness.
List.
what an ego boost for Thursday morning. This is wonderful.
Nice.
That's awesome. Wow, it's like whoever was in the chat was just a plant to sort of tease what's next. But that's really cool. I didn't even know this was in this stage. But yeah, I mean the overall idea here is again what dynamic workflows opens up is all these different entry points of creating different workflows. So there could be a future where not only are you making workflows from Studio, but you can do it from the agent builder. You can do it from maybe even different channels you have. So do it from like a Slack or something like that. So I think all of that stuff is definitely on our minds. But yeah, it's awesome to see that already we're at a great place where, I mean, no, I didn't see any bugs on my end. So seems like we're already in a great place to getting them started in Studio. Yeah, and I don't see any more questions right now, but feel free to send more in. But yeah, just to like address some of the comments, I guess, in here. So yeah, such a time saver for people prototyping with people who like visual cues. Yeah, 100%. So I think that's a big thing that, we've heard from different users is, you know, Mastra at its course, because it's the framework level, has a lot more power than a lot of these sort of like visual UI products people might use to build out workflows. But despite that, there are still so many users that really just want that visual sort of ability to make different workflows and stuff like that. People have gotten very used to this like drag and drop and being able to just use natural language and convert it into workflows. So definitely there's a lot of people that we've seen that really just learn visually and like being able to see that whole system, especially when you have something like a workflow that does follow that deterministic path that is easier to sort of understand visually. So yeah, we totally agree here that it's great, and we think it will open up a lot of doors for people that, maybe haven't been as comfortable getting in the weeds of development with Mastra, but could be a lot more keen on doing stuff like within a UI or within the studio. And yeah, similarly after that, Monique, totally agree, can create time, like can save a lot of time. And, especially if you're making workflows that feel pretty straightforward and you feel like you have a good vision towards, similar to Agent Builder, that's totally a time where you can kind of rapidly just add a bunch of them using UI rather than necessarily needing to code it out, redeploy the project, all that stuff. So can be good for like fast iteration, fast sort of testing of workflows, all that different stuff. But yeah, with that in mind, I'll wait like another minute or two, see if we get any more questions. And again, just to restate this, we will have a GitHub repo after this call where you'll be able to like play around with a lot of this stuff, see how it was built. And beyond that, we'll also have a recording of this that should be sent over to everyone. We also have it live on YouTube, or this is live on YouTube, but we have the recording that will be up on YouTube. And yeah, so it seems like mostly wrapped up. Of course, if you ever have any questions that you come up with after this, feel free to reach out to us. My email is just brandon@mastra.ai, nick@mastra.ai. Luckily, we're the kind of place where you can have the first name email, which is really awesome. But other than that, just to give a little sneak preview of sort of what's going on in the coming weeks. So next week on Tuesday, I will be hosting a webinar with Mora, who is building on Mastra and has some really cool stuff that they've been building out in terms of like context injection and stuff like that. So tune in next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to catch me chatting with Mora on a use case that they're building with. And then a week from today, on next Thursday at this same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, we will be actually chatting about trace intelligence, which will be another really, really exciting one. Similar to this, trace intelligence is something that we've been super excited about building out. Um, Basically, as like the one-liner, trace intelligence helps you pull insights from different traces that you've been running, which is sort of the first step in starting to have this loop where your evals can influence your source code, and you can have this whole learning process where you're actually pulling insights away from your traces, making them way more actionable. But with that in mind, I think we can wrap up here. So it was such an honor spending a good 45 minutes with you all. Thank you all for coming. And thank you so much, Nick, for that demo. That was really incredible, and super excited to see where dynamic workflows goes from here.
Yeah, same.
All right. See everyone. Have a great rest of your day or a good night.
See everybody.